Hello and welcome into Point Play. This is our first episode on the Infinity Sports Network. I'm your host, Noah Taborda, alongside my co-host, CB Garrett, ready to bring you all the latest in the NBA, which just recently kicked off. And that's basically all we have, NBA, and more NBA. CB, how you doing?
Are we going to cover the NBA on this show, Noah?
I'm not sure. I'm still deciding. But yeah.
All right. Well, I think, as Noah alluded to, we might start off by covering the NBA, and then we'll move on to our other topics of the NBA. But I think before we get into that, I think we have to introduce our show a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, so we will be talking, well, starting off with today. We're going to be talking Bulls versus Cavs. Of course, they played their first game on Halloween night. More Bulls. Jimmy Butler not re-signing, but, of course, saying that he will re-sign later on. The Thunder off to a tough start, and then they lose, of course, Russell Westbrook, add on Kevin Durant's injury. Miami, San Antonio, and we'll have some predictions later on in the show, including MVP, conference champions, and the NBA champions. So yeah, that's what we've got planned for you. We got Facebook. One day we'll have Facebook and Twitter as well. Number to call 224-563-8444. Again, 224-563-8444. So let's get in with some quick news. Not much, but we will have a couple of things. And it's mainly re-signing, of course. Ricky Rubio agreed to a new 4-year, $56 million extension with the Timberwolves. Anderson Varejao, the Wild Thing, extends his deal with the Cavaliers. It seems like he'll be a Cavalier for life. $20.9 million over 3 years. And the Jazz come to deals with with Burks, and it's a 4-year, $42 million deal. Eric, I have no idea where that came from. Well, let's move on now to the main first topic, Bulls versus Cavs. Round 1, Cavs won. And, of course, we're both Bulls fans. But we can take things in context, I guess, be a little bit less biased than normal. CB, let's start with your thoughts on the game overall. What did you think about this game?
Well, I think the biggest thing to take away from this in any game that's going to be watched for the Bulls this year is going to be the health of Derrick Rose. And obviously he came out of that game and sprained both of his ankles and was unable to play the next night in Minnesota. But he looked pretty effective in the time he was on the court. He only played 25 minutes, but he was able to score 20 points. He did shoot 8 of 16, which is not bad, 50%, and hit his first 2 threes of the year. But he's looked really explosive to start the year, even though he might not be finishing as well as we've come to expect from Derrick Rose. And I also have liked what I've seen from the Chicago Bulls bench so far. In that game, they got 31 points off the bench, mostly coming from Aaron Brooks, Tony Snell, and Taj Gibson. And I think that's the biggest thing we're going to see with the Bulls this year. Their bench is going to really beat some teams down, especially once we see the Bulls play a game with their full team. The Bulls didn't have Jimmy Butler for the first 2 games, and then the last game they were without Derrick Rose and Taj Gibson. I think this is a team that you're going to see that's really going to kill some teams with their depth, because you're going to look at a bench that's either going to have Mike Dunleavy or Doug McDermott, as well as Kirk Heinrich, Taj Gibson, Nikola Mirotic, and Aaron Brooks, and that's going to be probably the best bench in basketball. We didn't see all of this on display against the Cavs, and LeBron had an outstanding performance, and we saw some great defense from Matthew Dellavedova who got a lot of minutes. But there's not going to be a lot of teams whose bench are going to be able to score with the Bulls. And Tristan Thompson had 16 points, rebounded the ball very well, especially with 12 offensive rebounds. And that's going to be a problem for the Bulls. But overall, we've seen from the Cavs that they're not quite a cohesive unit yet. And it's going to take some time for them, but we've certainly seen from the Bulls that they have the potential to be a very, very good team this year.
Yeah, I have to agree. One of the big issues was, of course, as you said, Tristan Thompson. A lot of offensive rebounds, and you can't have that happening, especially when you've grown to be a rebounding and defensive team like the Bulls. You have to bring down the boards. And it was just an uncharacteristic night from the Bulls. In total, only 42 rebounds to the Cavaliers' 52. Not something I would get used to if I were a Bulls fan. We're definitely going to get better in that. And when you hold a team like the Cavaliers to 39.4% shooting, that's something you look at and you say, great. That is a great number to have. Below 40% is what you want them to have. We hit the same amount of shots as them on 14 less attempts. That just shows efficiency. And, of course, the bench played well again. I think as we get healthier, as the minute restrictions start to go up on Noah and Rose, once we have the complete team, I think this team is a very, very dangerous team. I mean, you see it in the game against Minnesota. We obviously don't have Taj coming off the bench. Mirotic comes in. He plays great off the bench as well. We get help from Jimmy, who I think could have a career year this year. I really liked what I saw from the Bulls in this game. Some poor clock management at the end, but it showed great resiliency, even without a guy like Derek, who played very well in the limited time he had, scoring 20 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists in 25 minutes. So I liked it. I like what I saw, and not going to read into it too much. Second game of the year. I would have liked to see these teams play a little bit farther on into the season to see how they were coming along. So we're going to go now to the MVP of the game. CB, who do you think deserves to go home with that award?
I think you have to give it to LeBron here. Now, clearly, he's the reason why they won. 36 points, as well as 8 rebounds. Kevin Love also played well. He had 16 rebounds and 16 points. But LeBron did not shoot great. He was only 14. I shouldn't say he didn't shoot great. He shot a lot of shots, 14 from 30 from the field. But he was the only starter for the Cavs that really shot well. Anderson Varejao was 4-8, and he's never going to put up a lot of points. Kyrie was 6 of 17. Deion Waiters was 3 of 10. And Kevin Love was 5 of 17. So LeBron completely carried that team in terms of offensive output. You're going to have to give the MVP to him. And I think for the Bulls standpoint, it's going to be interesting to see how they can him up in the coming months of the year, especially when they get their defensive stopper and Jimmy Butler on him next time they play him.
Yeah, just for the sake of, a little bit of difference, I'll go with Tristan Thompson. The guy pulled down 13 rebounds, 12 offensive rebounds. I think you see a very different game if the Bulls win the second chance battle. If they can pull down those boards, stop the second and third opportunities, I think you see a very different game. And there were a couple of moments there where Taj Gibson going for a rebound that could potentially give us a chance to tie or take the lead or extend the lead, and Tristan Thompson was right there. Here's a question, though, for the future for Thompson. Once Taj gets back to normal, once he's getting the boards and Thompson isn't, what happens with Thompson? Because he only got 1 defensive rebound. When he has inside position, that's when you need to get boards. That won't continue, hopefully. But for right now, I'm going to give it to Tristan Thompson. And now to the question everybody wants to know. Who holds the edge in the next matchup, CB?
Well, matchup by matchup, it's hard to tell, but I think the Bulls actually have an edge over the Cavaliers this year. I think this is the best Bulls team we've seen in Derrick Rose era, especially if he can stay healthy. And that's a big caveat here. But if you look at the Cavs, they really don't have a lot of inside defense other than Anderson Varejao. And the Bulls are going to be able to throw at you Joakim Noah, Taj Gibson, and Pau Gasol, and then be able to stretch the floor with Mirotic. It's going to be tough for the Cavs to guard him because Kevin Love is not a very good perimeter defender, and then inside defender as well. And then you throw Tristan Thompson in the mix, and they don't really have any other big that can put on the floor and give minutes. Their only other centers on the roster right now are Alex Kirk and Brendan Hayward, and they aren't going to get a lot of minutes, and especially at Brendan Hayward's stage of his career. I think the Bulls have shooting this year, which is a big difference for them. We've seen Mirotic hit some threes. We saw one in the Knicks game. I think we saw 3 last night against Minnesota. And then Taj Gibson inside is going to be a huge factor. And then Aaron Brooks off the bench has looked explosive, and he's been scoring the ball well for them. I just think the Bulls have a lot more options than we're used to from Derrick Rose's team. Kirk Heinrich has been playing well. Rose has looked explosive. Pau Gasol and Joakim Noah are playing well. And Dunleavy and Doug McDermott give them shooting. And then Jimmy Butler, I think, is poised to have close to a 20-point-per-game season. And he's looked really athletic this year. And he's played very well in the preseason. I think this is a Bulls team that should really contend for the top spot in the NBA. So I think that they're going to be better than the Cavs this year. They still have their problems. Not as much shooting as we'd expect. Kevin Love has struggled with his stroke a little bit to start the year. Kyrie's not a real jump shooter. Who knows what Mike Miller still has left. He had a great season last year. And the bench is really pretty weak. And I think the Bulls' depth is really going to cause some problems for the Cavaliers.
Yeah, matchup by matchup, here's the thing. At the end of the day, I don't think it really matters who wins in the regular season. I don't. Sure, Cleveland could end up with home court advantage, but like CB said, depth. It's all about depth for these Bulls. Sure, when you look at our starting lineups versus their starting lineup, you'd say Cleveland's got an edge. They've got Love, they've got LeBron, they've got Kyrie, just name by name. But you go to the bench, they are going to need significant minutes from guys like Dellavedova, from guys like Marion and Miller. Those aren't the guys you can look to. And after those four, it's Joe Harris, James Jones, Kirk, and Haywood. They're just not going to give you what you need. You look on the Bulls side, Taj, Nikola, you've got Snell, you've got McDermott, you've got Brooks. It's so much more depth than Cleveland is used to or that they can match up with. In a 7-game series, they're going to be exhausted. They're going to need to give significant minutes to Love, to James. You saw it in that game. 42 for James, 41 for Love. In a long postseason with tough matchups, they're going to get tired. And they're going to need to look to those bench players. They're going to need to look to Marion and Miller. And I don't think Marion and Miller match up well with what the Bulls can bring on. You bring on a guy like Kirk Heinrich off the bench to score. You bring in McDermott. And these are guys who are going to be fresh because we can keep rotating through players. See, when we lose Noah, I don't feel worried because we bring in a guy like Taj. If we lose Taj, we bring in a guy like Mirotic, who I'm perfectly comfortable with as well. I don't think Cleveland has that same level of comfortableness when it comes to just matchup by matchup. The next time we'll play these will be two completely different teams. They'll be used to playing with each other. They'll be a lot more developed in their game strategies. The Bulls hopefully will be a lot more healthy, maybe give a couple more minutes to Rose at that point. But at the end of the day, it's who wins in the playoffs, and I think the Bulls are poised to win it. So, on to the next topic, and CB, why don't you take it away?
All right. Jimmy Butler is one of the many players who didn't sign a contract at the October 31st deadline for players who are 4 years into their NBA career. And he was offered about $11 million a year from the Bulls. And we're wondering, Noah, do you think he'll return to the Bulls next year?
Yeah, look, he talked about it already. And he said he will return. And he feels that this is the place for him to be. And I don't think he is chasing money. I think that this is the money that he feels he deserves. You saw it 2 years back when they had the All-Star game in Houston. Of course, he's from Houston. He wanted to be there, felt he should be there. He feels he's an All-Star caliber player. And I think he will have one of those years, actually. A lot less pressure on him. He'll have a lot more open space. Great defender. And I think he will be back. I think the system that Thibodeau has, it fits just the kind of player he is. He's a hardworking defensive monster, and I don't see him going anywhere else. I think this is the perfect spot for him, and I think he likes it here. So I expect him back in the red and white next year.
I would have to agree, but I think that the Bulls are going to have to pay a lot more to keep him than they would have if they signed him before the October 31st deadline. Because I think Jimmy Butler is going to have a fantastic season, and he's going to turn into a true two-way player that's going to average close to 20 points a game and be able to lock down the other team's best player for probably close to 75, 80 games a year. And I think that's going to make Butler's value go way up. And I bet he's going to get over $15 million a year come this offseason. Now, whether the Bulls are going to choose to match that or not remains to be seen. And I think they have to, because the Bulls are going to need a true stopper in any Tom Thibodeau coach team. And we saw that with Luol Deng, and they let him walk. And they can't let another one of those guys, Jimmy Butler, walk. but I think the Bulls are going to have to pay for letting Butler go.